Hey, you guys. Welcome back to the Coachable Podcast. It's Tori, and today I have the lovely honor of having a dear friend, Rara Rivera, in the studio today. Rara, if you don't know her, is a medical intuitive. She's a Reiki Master and practitioner. She is the owner and founder of Oura Ritual and Practice here in Las Vegas. And she is just so gifted in so many different areas, including her psychic abilities, but also just gifted as a facilitator, a practitioner, a coach, and someone who helps people integrate psychedelic experiences and really just create mind, body, soul wellness and alignment. And so today I'm really excited to have her in the studio to talk about her gifts and how she learned how to use these gifts, because they exist within all of us, and how we can create more alignment in our lives, especially during this eclipse season and this season of change and spring. So Rara, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
That was a beautiful intro.
Oh, thank you. Well, sometimes I hit it, sometimes I don't, but with you, it's easy.
So well spoken.
Oh, you're sweet. But yeah, I'm so excited to have you here. I've been privileged to be in your orbit a little bit over the last 6 months to a year. And as you know, Las Vegas kind of does sometimes, because it's a small town, feels like a big city, but it's really a small town. We cross paths through the wellness and healing space through events. And then I came to learn about your practice at Oura and what you do. And yeah, I've been kind of in and around each other's worlds for a little while, but I also haven't had a ton of personal one-on-one time with you to get to know kind of your story, your background, outside of understanding that you're just really powerful in the sense of the presence that you carry, the energy that you have, and the way that you support people, and the ways that I've heard people say, you know, that you've supported them. So anytime that I, have a chance to learn from somebody who's had experiences that I haven't had, that knows things I don't know, I'm like a sponge. So I wanted to, I guess, start this conversation by understanding a little bit about your background and how you got into this work. Like, how did you start to understand that you had these psychic gifts and abilities, and understand energy versus being a medical intuitive? Like, is this something you go to school for? Is this something you've always known you could do?
So it's definitely evolved. So I believe that I was always gifted, right? And I always, when I use the word gifted, I always kind of like, I kind of do this weird little shake, because I'm like, that word, everyone sees it as gifted, but I'm like, they're just natural human senses that we can gauge up or down, with the volume. And when I was a child, I was raised Catholic, but when I mean raised Catholic, that means very minimal, just going to church, not really much education towards it. And I was very sensitive, as in I can hear and feel things already within the home. And when I tried to get understanding of those things, there weren't really answers. I was an only child for about 10 years until my brother came along. So I felt like I had a lot of introspection especially with my parents physically working all the time, emotionally unavailable for me. So trying to provide myself whatever I needed, whether it's to cope or to feel occupied. I think my senses just started to heighten. And curiosity was, just there consciously and unconsciously. So when I was a child, I would ask my parents, like, what is happening? What is this thing in my room? And they would just tell me to go pray. I would tell people now that my evolution of me is a very common psychic story. I've read so many biographies of people who are similar to me till this day, trying to understand why I am the way I am, without too much question, but just really deep diving.
Sure.
And we have very similar upbringings, which is fascinating. So as I got older, I kind of, was always interested in the metaphysical things, the psychics, how are they reading this? How do you really know? Is it something you're born with? All the same questions that you're probably asking me now. And I started to realize that these things were happening to me, that my inner dialogue was something else beyond me talking to me. And then the more it got louder, the more I started to question even more. I never stopped questioning what was happening to me or why I was feeling these ways. So yeah, that's kind of where it started, just at childhood with my parents going, no, go pray.
So what was it that you were actually experiencing? Were you hearing things? Were you seeing things? Like, and especially as a child, to start to understand or discern, like, what is happening?
Mm-hmm.
Were you aware of, you know, was it a felt sense of like a presence that was, you know, in and around you? Kind of explain what that was like.
It was a mixture of things.
Mm-hmm.
So there would be times where I would see something actually, like with my 3D eyes, with my physical eyes, like by my room door.
Mm-hmm.
And then there were times where I would see orbs. And then there were times where I felt like things were watching me. Mm-hmm. And from the feeling of someone watching me or the feeling of something walking around my room, then different senses would connect to those things. It was like one thing to another to make sure that I wasn't lying to myself, you know, but I didn't know. I was making sure for it to know that they were in the room or whatever it was in the room. It was almost like, I'm not going to let you not be aware of me.
So it almost like wanted you to know of its presence.
Yeah. I believe they were a little more low frequency during those times because of the situations that were happening in my home, arguments within my family, where my home was and things like that. So now that I'm older, I could look back and be like, okay, I understand what was trying to get my attention and me as a child being very vulnerable.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And, you know, when I think about children, I don't have children, but I remember like hearing stories from when I was little. And when actually my sister was little, there was a specific story my mom would tell us. We grew up in the South. I was born in Mississippi and in like sort of in the middle of nowhere. I mean, essentially compared to where we are here, you know? Yeah. And my mom would always tell the story of when Anna, my older sister, was really little. I don't even know if I was born at this point. They went to this like haunted house tour or like this tour of, I don't know if it was even, they knew it was haunted, but it was like a historic mansion tour and on some kind of field trip or something. And this little girl who was on the field trip like wandered off, and at one point they were like looking for her and she came back and she was like, they were like, where were you? This wasn't my sister. It was like another girl on the field trip.
Okay.
And she was like, where were you? And she was like, oh, I was upstairs playing with a little girl in like the upstairs bedroom. And apparently there was like something that had like gone on there.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think oftentimes when we hear of children recount experiences they have, whether it's with, you know, people who've passed on to the other side or energies of some kind or entities of different kinds, or they're hearing things or seeing things, we can also like oftentimes like write it off as like their imagination.
Yeah.
Right. And just dismiss it. And it sounds like you didn't have maybe anyone in your life when you were younger to encourage you to kind of be able to tap into these things. It was more like pray it away.
And I'd literally be in my room like, our Father who art in heaven, and I'd be like, nothing's happening. So that was a lot of what was happening in my life. I would try to do my best for all these things my parents told me to do, and I wouldn't see the outcome of it, right? But it was all in the perspective that I needed to see and believe in it in. It was like growing into a religion and then not understanding how to incorporate faith is what I tell people. Because it's like you could say you're this and that, but it's still the faith and the belief that's going to protect you, right?
Yeah.
So it's definitely hard for me. I mean, for a lot of people, I'm sure, because we go through a lot of these, especially now when people are evolving into something different. Their family is like,
don't understand.
I don't understand.
Yeah. And we're often scared of what we don't understand, right? And so that makes me think of the beginning of like when any of us as little children are unconsciously taught to not trust ourselves.
Yeah. I believe it starts all the way there, right? The inner child work starts all all there.
It's like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, that's not what's happening. It's like gaslighting the little child. That's like, that's not happening. Right. But there's part of you that knows that that's truth. And even from that young age, you're taught to dismiss it and not to listen to it. How did that develop over time in years?
So I just kind of kept it to myself, the things that I liked, which is interesting though, because my my family background, and they're from the Philippines,
Okay.
and a lot of these things are very normal in the Philippines.
Okay.
But hey, we're in America, right? Like, turn it off, shut it down. That doesn't happen here in my parents' world. So I kind of just put it in the closet, you know, and it was interesting though, because I always had very puffy hair when I was younger. So automatically people in school would call me like a witch and just kind of do the little bullying thing, right? And I didn't understand how my hair was associated to being a witch, but then, you know, these little things that randomly happen in your life all has like bigger meanings to it. And I was always given that title for some reason. And I started telling them like, yeah, what if I am? Like, I believe in magic, you know, and things like that. And the more people were curious about it, I'd share things with them about like, hey, this happens to me, this, like, and all this is already going on. Do you believe in that? Trying to find people to kind of like converse about with this. And that was elementary school. Going into middle school is pretty normal. You know, I started to like look into horoscopes and tarot cards online. Not really much. It was like Yahoo horoscopes, things like that. And then I'd start telling people a little insight of what I think. But I would use the words I think rather than I feel during those times. And my friends were going through very similar things, but, you know, we're all going through our little traumatic things in our family. But these horoscopes would resonate. So I would kind of be like that person already, like providing this insight, but I didn't even know what I was doing. I was just like, yeah, I read the horoscope and now I'm just telling you what I think, you know? But it was like a channel the whole time. And then when I go into high school, it's pretty normal. People know that, hey, I could read people here and there because I think it's just the little ways that I've expressed myself. But I also kind of still felt like I couldn't express myself fully. And then when I go into college, I kind of move around a lot because while I was in college, I was a traveling dancer at the same time. And I was actually having fun, making money, and paying for nursing school. That was like the way.
Got it.
And when I was in nursing school, I felt like I was living 3 lives. I felt like here is me and who I really feel inside, the person that I am outside, and then the person that I am on the weekends, just to do all of what I needed to do. So a lot of disconnect was happening into my life because I needed to integrate who I was. And that friction was creating a lot of like malfunctions, I feel like, in my life. And the malfunctions is what was calling the spiritual side more to be like, hey, wake up.
Look at this.
Look at this. Look
Pay
at
attention.
you. Yes, we're trying to give you direction, but you're not listening because you're working too hard. And I would just relax sometimes, and then my head, like my mind was louder than anything else in the room. It's almost like when you've ever experienced silence and it's too loud. It was like that, but imagine your own thoughts like screaming, but it sounds scary, but in different voices plus your own. So I was kind of confused of what was going on with me in my life at this time. And during that time, again, I was going to school for nursing, and the nursing places that I would go to for clinicals, the things that I would think would appear. The things that I would feel, it would get stronger when I walked into the room. I was having these perceptions that are already starting to happen. My dreams started to become more vivid. So it was around when I was about 19 to 21 during this time of when these things started getting like louder. But it was also the time in my life where I was getting further and further away from who I actually was. My most broken times in my life.
So there's like this big contrast between almost this alternate like unseen force that's trying to get your attention, that's trying to say, hey, look at me, pay attention, and let me get louder. And then like your physical world that feels very real and feels very like your reality is almost taking you in 2 different directions. But it was up to me and what I truly wanted for self to choose. The me in the center, but getting pulled in all directions, not knowing what was true. No, this side, they say don't listen to. Then that side, no, that's where I need to go. Right. But then it was like, but who said? Well, and I think this is coming back to faith on some level. That point in which you have to come to a decision of am I going to trust what I feel that I know, or am I going to trust what feels real and safe, right? And familiar. And oftentimes we put such an emphasis on the physical 3D material world and safety and doing what's expected of us and following the path that leads to quote unquote stability and safety versus starting to potentially reorient and turn your energy and your focus and your attention and your time towards trusting this other part of you that is just as real, but you don't have as much proof that it's going to, you know what I mean, to lead you anywhere necessarily, or maybe you don't have a team of supportive people that are saying like, yeah, this is your path, right? How did you decide? Was there a choice point where of that integration of these two lives that you were living?
There was. So once I finished my nursing school in California, I was in LVN at this time. I was in San Diego, and I would work, what was the shifts? I was working in psych units because I felt that was more exciting than anything out there, because I was like, oh, I am like an exciting person. I need thrill. So I was like, oh, psych units, which, oh God, those were something crazy on a different level.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I worked, I believe it was at the time 3 days on, I had 4 days off. That was a typical kind of like schedule.
Nursing shift,
yeah. And I was like, well, what do I do on the rest of the days? You know, little me wants to party. And then little me also didn't really have like connections here so much because I was there with an ex-husband. And one of my friends that I would dance with, she goes, well, why don't you go to school for that other stuff that you like? And I'm like, what? And she was like that psychic shit. And I was like, you could go to school for that? And I was like, but what are they going to teach me? And she's like, I don't know, she's like, I don't know, maybe it's like Harry Potter, like you learn how to like go to magic school. And I was like, okay. So I started looking those things up, and I was like, well, you know what? I actually really want to learn herbology because
literally we're going to Hogwarts, people.
We're going to Hogwarts. But why? It's because I would say about 6 months prior, I was living in Texas, and again, one of the most broken times of my life. I was depressed. I couldn't sleep. I was broken because I basically ran away from my house and didn't go home for years. Like I was running away from my family, and I couldn't sleep for a long time, and someone recommended that I drink sleepy time tea. Like out of everything, sleepy time tea. And then when I could finally sleep, I looked at the box and was like, what is this? You know, I was like, it made me sleep, you know? And so yeah, fast forward now in San Diego, I was like, I want to learn herbology. I want to know why that tea let me go to bed, but nothing else could. I was drinking almost like NyQuil every night and waking up groggy, and it's like, this isn't right either, you know? And I went on Craigslist, you know, looked for like tea shops or wherever I could like learn herbology. And at this time of my life, I was still pretty much broke. My ex was in the military, and then we had one car, and I had like still my nursing debt that I still had to pay. So really all my money went to that, you know, and I also hated it. So if I could work less, then I'm like, great. But what do I do to kind of still make money? And I found a place called Tea Gallery online. I was like, I'm not going to work at, do you remember Starbucks had Teavana, I think it was? Yeah, so I kept seeing those ads on there, and I was like, no, I'm not going to be a damn barista, you know? I was like, my standards are a little high here, and I was like, I'm not going to let anyone catch me working, like, no offense.
Better than that.
Yeah, but I was like, I'm not going to just, out of all this, go and be a barista. So I found Tea Gallery, and they were looking for a marketing person. I hit them up and I told them, like, I was literally like, hey, I have no dang marketing experience, but I will work for free if you just teach me everything that you know about tea. And then he was like, okay, well, come to the office. Went there, and it was just this beautiful gallery of just teas that were from all over the world. Like, this family traveled everywhere. And then plot twist, they were also a very spiritually connected family. So they understood who I was, and they asked the right questions for me to even understand who I was also, because they could intuitively feel that.
I love this. It's like the puzzle pieces are starting to come together when you start to follow your curiosities naturally. The people and the opportunities and the clarity starts to come in a little bit more. It's almost like when you're asking this question of like, who am I?
Yeah.
What am I meant to do? What are these gifts? What are these questions? Like, and it feels like a jumbled mess.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, the way I think of that in my head is like a very pixelated photograph. And that when you start to just take the next step towards something that lights you up and that brings you like energy and something you naturally want to spend your time learning about, researching. What are the books that you pick up when you have nothing else to do? If you had no responsibilities, how would you spend your time? What would you spend it learning about? And you start to then take the next step towards pursuing that. What I find is that pixelated photo comes just a tiny bit more clear into perspective.
Like as you keep shifting it, right? Kind of like the kaleidoscope.
Exactly. Yeah. Wow. So they were a big catalyst then?
They were a really big catalyst. So during that time, it made no sense for me to even go there and work for free. My ex at the time was just like, what the hell? I have to drop you here and then go all the way to work, which was like 30 miles. It was crazy. But I was like, no, I have to. Like, it's the only thing making me happy. So I would smell teas and I started to heal people. I will learn about the teas, and then the people that were coming in, I would use my medical knowledge as well as...
Because of your nursing background.
Yeah. Okay. So I'd use my medical knowledge, and people were coming in here and getting healed.
Wow.
And like I've helped so many people heal their addiction to coffee. Like that was one of the biggest things there. Like there are all these versions of teas, and people wanting to get off coffee was a really big thing. So I'd be like, okay, here's this tea that has this much caffeine. This is what it does, how often to drink it. If you need something sweet with it, this will pair great with it, and just from that and just the education, I was like, wow, I love educating,
Fascinating. Yeah. Is that like a tea sommelier almost?
Yeah, basically. They allowed me to take the course for free there. So they gave me the certificate to become that. And they also started having workshops there. So plot twist, how Reiki came into my life.
Yeah.
I was already obviously intuitive. Sometimes I would think that I was moody, but I didn't realize it's because I would take everyone else's moods around me and then claim them as my own, right? But no one knows that. So many of us do that nowadays.
We don't know what's ours and what someone else's.
And we're just like, yeah, that's me today. And it's like, no, actually, it's not you today, right? You woke up fine. Now you're feeling all kinds of, where did that come from?
Right. I can feel that when the days that I wake up and I get straight on social media, I'm fine in the morning, and then I look, and then all of a sudden there's like this cloud.
Yeah, it's like a really smooth transition.
It's so subtle. And the cloud analogy kind of is great because clouds come in
very subtly,
very subtly, and all of a sudden, what was sunny now there's clouds.
Yeah, and you're like, it's kind of dark now.
Yeah, yeah. That's how I interpret it too. So you started to become aware that you were picking up on the energy of other people.
Yeah.
Okay.
So during that time, I started to get a little more focused on my mood shifts. I didn't really do anything different other than I think I just had a lot more time to have fun where I wanted, right? I never wanted to show up to work as a nurse. I was tired of go-go dancing because we were totally like undervalued there, but all these shoes that we'd have to wear was crazy. But I was like, ow.
Yeah.
So I just had more room. And that's really important in everyone's lives, right? It's like when you do the 9 to 5 and then you don't have room for your passions, like you're not going to have room to understand what's happening to you or the space. You need space. So I just had a lot more space. And then next, anxiety started to come in. Didn't know what that was all about. Never even knew what anxiety was, but heard it so much everywhere. Everyone has anxiety. And I'm like, oh, I don't. Next year I'm like, wait, I do.
I remember that when that happened to me in my 20s.
So there was something new that started, well, not really new, but came back very like more enhanced in my life when it came to my senses. It was almost like I had gaps of when my modalities were surfacing and like screaming at me. They always felt like they were screaming at me. I was driving to the beach. I lived maybe like 2 miles away from the beach. So I would drive to the beach, and this happened to me a lot, but there was a gap before it did again. And I was explaining it as, it's almost as if my eyes closed and I started watching elsewhere. And I was driving. I was almost at the beach where there's this last stop sign and you either have to go left or right. I was gonna go straight. And my brain or my mind just clicked back to where my eyes felt like they opened. And I didn't even know how many stoplights I passed that were red or green. And I was like, how did I not get pulled over? And then here goes anxiety pulling over next to this laundromat, and I'm crying because I'm like, something's happening to me. And all I could think about is I'm going crazy.
Well, that was going to be my question. When I hear all of this, is there any point in this journey so far where you're questioning your own mental health and am I going into psychosis? Like, what's happening to me?
It was around that time. There was another time prior to that, which was maybe like 2 years when I first moved back to LA. This was still during nursing school. And I remember going to my cousin's house and I was like, something's happening to me. Same words. I was like, something's happening to me. And she's like, what's happening to you? And I was telling her, you know, when you could like feel people or you could tell they're going through something. And she was like, yeah. And I was like, I'm feeling that like 10 times stronger. And here goes a disregard that I'm used to in my family. She goes, oh, I could do that too. She's like, that's normal. She's like, why do you think you're going, like, why do you think it's wrong? And she's like, why are you feeling like something's happening to you? And I was like, because you don't understand. Like, it's loud. Like, I feel like it's taking over the rest of my body. Like, internally, if I'm hearing my thoughts and I don't know what to do with it, my body kind of just feels like if it's internally convulsing, like almost like adjusting and trying to process. It was too strong to process. So that was the first experience. The second one was, yes, these visions. These visions started to become more prominent, I'd say. I used to have a lot of my dreams be premonitions within that same week. Like the timeline was always a week, and I'd get scared because I didn't know what was real or what was going to happen. So I think that's how the anxiety started to surface in my life. But now it was a little more like external to where I'm like, whoa, I'm on the road. This is a safety factor.
Yeah, it's affecting my safety, and in the midst of me living my life, these are coming in and interrupting or interfering with me living a normal life in certain ways.
Not knowing what to do. I've been to the doctors before for it.
Yeah, what is it? Okay, I need to know. What does a doctor say when you show up and you're like, I'm having visions?
Gaps,
but so what kind of, I'm sure they're quick to diagnose you with something.
Yeah, and my smart ass was like, can you draw that on the whiteboard? Because they wanted to give me medication for it.
Sure.
But I was like, I don't understand how medication.
You're schizophrenic or you're this or you're that. Yeah.
It was a freaking military doctor because my ex was in the military. And I told him like, hey, I'm going to go get checked. But I didn't really say what because he was also kind of toxic in my life during that time. And the doctors were like, okay, so what's happening? And I was like, well, there'll be times where this is what was happening at the time beyond anxiety. My eyesight would have like vertigo. It's almost like if I was on psychedelics without having psychedelics. Whoa. Yeah, I'd be like, whoa. And then I would get the feelings from what I was looking. But I was like, do I have vertigo? Not sure what's causing all of these things. But now that I'm older, I've experienced these things and they're almost like ascension symptoms. Right? And I'm like, which we
will explain.
Yes. It's so exciting. And they brought me into a room. They're like, okay, from the normal doctor room to now almost like the social worker's room. It's more of like therapy setting now. And then they were saying, okay, explain this to me. How do you treat yourself? I swear they thought I was crazy because I was like, I treat myself with tea. Like,
they're like, are you on drugs?
Like, what kind of tea? You mean like weed?
How many edibles have you taken?
And then when I realized I was getting that same feeling that my parents gave me, which was, you're crazy.
Dismissal,
go tuck it back in. I was like, okay, I'll come back. And I didn't even know what to say. I was just like, I'll come back. They're like, okay, like, would you? And I was like, no, I'll come back when I feel like I should come back. I didn't know what else to do. I just wanted to leave.
Right.
Run away was my thing. And yeah, that's when I realized I can't really get normal help. But what do? I'm actually looking for help,
right.
You know?
You were seeking somebody's
something
guidance
that I didn't know. And I wasn't even as vulnerable where I didn't share this too much with the people at the tea spot because they were so on a different level of consciousness. It was normal to them. So to me, that felt too much.
Oh, it's too much.
It felt too much. It felt safe at the same time. It was almost like having siblings that knew everything already. And I'm like, but can you please like guide me at least? Because I'm kind of like in there or I'm just not. You know, I was kind of lost in the transition in between.
Got it.
So I ended up going to different psychic stores. I started realizing, okay, I'm going to go ask psychics because I think I'm psychic, you know, but I never wanted to give myself that title because I was like, well, what is a psychic?
And who decides that?
Yeah, I know. I was like, what is a psychic?
Who gives
And
you,
like, how do you know this is what psychic stuff does? And I would go to different psychic stores, this Buddha store. I realized I loved going to these things because I was finding these books that made sense. And that's how I've researched all these people that were psychic to see, like, how did they evolve? Is this freaking normal?
Right.
Like, what happened to them?
Right.
What did they do?
Right.
You know? And the psychic people, the tarot people would always be like, oh, you're gifted. And I'd be like, okay, well, what the F does that mean?
Because this feels less like, in certain ways, it might not feel like a gift. It feels like this is, you know, do I want this?
Yeah, it's almost like I'm getting haunted from the inside.
Right, right.
And I'm like, but what is haunting me? You know?
Mm-hmm. So many questions.
Yeah. So that kind of didn't help. I just kind of felt like, okay, I belonged there, but didn't understand those feelings either.
Okay.
Lots of lost feelings, but I just wanted to go and hang out in these stores sometimes and just kind of chop it up, but not really have deep conversations, just felt safe. So one time the tea shop, they asked me if I could hold the store open. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? You know? And she was like, well, we can't stay for this event tonight. And I think you should really hold the store open. And I was like, okay, I mean, sure, if you need me to. And I was like, but I don't really have gas. Like if I take the car, and she's like, no, we'll pay for your gas tank. I was like, okay, well, what kind of workshop is it? And she's like, it's a Reiki circle. And I was like, oh, that sounds interesting, circle, you know? And I was like, okay. She's like, you just have to open the door and keep it open and then just host them just like you do on a normal day with customers. I was like, okay. And this lady comes in, her name's Jan Serenity. And I was like, okay, this name, is that really her last name? Whatever. My mindset was just in a whole different place compared to where it's at now. And she starts her Reiki circle with all these little old ladies, you know. I was like, oh, the people actually come for this thing. Like, sure. I'm in the back kind of like just making different varieties of teas for them and drinking it. She starts the circle and she's like, I don't know. She's like ways out in the front by the front of the little shop. And next thing you know, I feel like there's just this echo wave come. And then next thing you know, I'm freaking sweating standing there and my heart's palpitating. I'm getting so confused of what's happening. But then right after that, I kind of turned around and was just like, I wish I could go now. Like, I want to run away. This feels overwhelming. This feels like I don't know if this is like health safe kind of thing, like whatever I'm feeling. I thought I was going to have a heart attack.
I'm going to pass out.
Yeah, like I'm going to pass out. I don't even know what I'm feeling. My head kind of felt like that bubble buzz of like, and then it kind of settled down and I was like, what the hell? I was just sweating my ass off here.
Yep.
And then at the end of the event, I asked her, hey, before you pack up, can I talk to you? And she's like, yeah, sure. She's like, just give me a moment. And I was like, okay. And then I go, okay, so whatever you were doing over there, I think something was happening to me here. And she goes, oh, you felt the energy. And I was just like, what? I was like, energy? And she was like, yeah. She's like, have you ever heard of Reiki before? And I was like, no. And I was like, but something's been happening to me and I feel like I should ask you. Like that was my first time. I literally put the words, I feel like I should ask you rather than I think I should ask you.
Oof, I just got chills.
Right? And it's like all of these little shifts that start to happen, even me hearing what I'm saying. And I go, so I've been having visions for a very long time. And then now that I'm older, it's kind of debilitating me where I don't even want to drive sometimes. I was like, because I don't know if I'm going to crash a car or if what I'm seeing is going to happen and it scares me. And she goes, Reiki will help. And I go, so it's going to help? And she goes, yeah. She goes, why don't you take the Reiki class? And I was like, so how do I do that? She's like, well, it's $200 and you know, she's like, I'll teach it to you over a course of a weekend. And I was like, okay. She's like, it really will help you. And I was all excited, like, wow, I'm finally going to hone in my ability to like see clear and like could turn it on or off. And that was, I feel like such a noob. When I look back and I'm like, I was really trying to control these visions.
Sure.
You know? I was like, where's the switch? I was like, she's going to teach me where the switch is in my head.
Right.
You know, and then when we
I can be quote unquote normal.
Yeah. I was like, I could be normal and like, I could just shut the shit off.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, I go take her course on a weekend and she's like, telling me what to do, telling me these stories, typical Reiki 1 traditional teachings. And I'm kind of sitting here like not listening on a table, like sitting on a table. And I'm like, I don't even understand what I'm doing. All I wanted was my visions to kind of like not be so chaotic and make me feel like I'm freaking insane. And she was like, yeah, there were ascended masters in the room. And I was just lost. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay.
Now you're speaking a different language.
Now I'm like, okay, I don't even know what I did. Not sure. Didn't trust my choices during that time. And then after that weekend, I was excited about it because she was telling me like what you could do with it and stuff like that. Energy comes out your hand. So now I just wanted to do it on everyone. But when that would happen, I would get headaches. I would give them to people or like give people healing or the Reiki energy. And the next thing you know, I'd get a headache. So I'd be like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't even know what the hell I'm doing. So I'd sit there and be like, okay, they think I know what I'm doing, but is it even on?
Right.
You know, all that. Yeah. Is it even on?
Yeah.
Whatever. And I didn't work with Reiki 1 for about 7 years.
Wow.
I call it I was stuck in Reiki 1 because there's a pattern when you go into that level, it's teaching you a lot about yourself. And mine was a 7-year journey because I was very resistant to self. I kept going, I don't get it. I don't get it. Hating what I was doing, hating my senses. Like, why does it always do this to me? I just want to be normal. So I kind of had a war inside for a very long time.
Wow. So 7 years.
7 years. Mm-hmm.
And then what happened?
So I moved back to, Reiki was definitely working in my life now that I look back at it, just not I'm healing in this way. It was working for me internally.
Sure. Because were you using it on yourself?
I wasn't using it on myself. Okay. I think it was just the energy channeling through me, kind of flushing me very slow and steadily for me to make the choices that was best for me.
So for those who don't know about Reiki, and because even though I've gone through this training and I am a practitioner, I haven't really talked about it that much on the show. So what is Reiki?
So Reiki is the universal life force energy, and us as a Reiki practitioner, we go through like a ceremonial teaching, right? You'll learn the history of it in level 1. There's different levels. There's 3 levels. And level 1, I always tell people that's the level of self. And level 1 is when you get the attunement. And attunement is the ceremonial, like passing on, the initiation of this energy. And when you get that, you are basically opened up to the channel of where universal life force energy comes from. And that could just be, whatever you believe in. That's based on your choosing your faith. So it's not religious by any means. It's not God, but it can be God. It's just broad and open. So I like to keep it very broad to like, it's the universe, Yeah. Sorry, my earring fell off.
It's the energy.
Yeah, it's just
you're getting signs.
Oh God. So and when your chakras are all open and attuned to this energy, the 7 main chakras, where they say, all parts of us will function based off of the chakras and their characteristics, you get to share that energy with people. And how? With our hands, you'll radiate it through your hands. It's almost like if we're a macaroni noodle, the energy will come to the crown of our heads, and then out to our hands. And you could feel sensations like heat sensations, cold sensations, and the effects of the person receiving it can feel those same things and even some more. Yeah.
I remember it was actually, I'm trying to remember now if I had already gone through my attunement at this point or not, but I was facilitating a mushroom journey. And when they were in the medicine, and, you attune to their energy and what they're experiencing. What the message that I overwhelmingly got was this channeled message of understanding this is why Jesus healed with the laying on of hands.
Yeah.
This is why he talked about like laying hands on people all the time, is that he was channeling.
Yeah, and I believe they do it at church.
Oh yeah, totally. Like it was so clear to me that I was starting to see the correlation between what I had been brought up to understand religiously in the Christian faith to this more new age spirituality. And basically we're talking about the same thing and calling it 2 different like names essentially, but it's the channel of life force energy, which Jesus is an example of being the channel that brought that love frequency and channeled it into, people that needed healing. And that's essentially what I see is what's happening in ceremony or in a session is just what I call it is how do I become the hollow bone?
Yeah.
Right. And in shamanism, that's kind of what we talk about, where it's me, Tori, the personality, and the ego steps aside so I can become the channel for the energy just to flow through.
Yep. And that's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's cool you say that too, because before every session, I always go, I step aside from my ego. And in that consciousness that we're in, that everyone also can definitely reach, I can envision myself. I close my eyes and I envision myself. Once I say that word, I could see an internal version of me come forward and step to the side. And who this is just loving and like whatever the intention will hold.
That's exactly how I experience it too. And it's not that I'm disconnected, like that version of me isn't here and present, but my ego is not what's leading the experience. Yeah.
It's like you could sit right there.
Yeah.
And then we'll work right here.
Witnessing and is in the back seat, essentially. Yeah.
Like I'm the driver right now.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So I wanted you to get people up to speed on understanding kind of what you were talking about when you say I was stuck in Reiki 1 kind of training and understanding for 7 years, because not everybody's experienced a Reiki healing session or just the concept of energy medicine or energy healing, although in our circles, this is very prominent and very, normal, but there are people that listen to the show that might be hearing this for the first time and think this is very woo woo or very taboo or my hope and prayer is that this empowers people to start asking questions, or if they've ever experienced anything like you have, or that I have these senses that you can't totally explain, or you don't know who to talk to about them, that you understand that there are people out there who've walked this same path, and that there is clarity to be, received when there's something that's so healing when you realize that there are other people who understand you.
Yeah. And you don't feel alone anymore.
Totally.
And that could come from like that inner child trauma of like feeling like you didn't have anyone to talk to, but now you're in a different world, maybe you're an adult now. Totally.
And there's so many people who have gone to conventional ways of healing, whether that's through the church or Western, religion, whether that's through the healthcare and Western medical model, allopathic model, whether it's, through just I'm in therapy and I'm trying to understand myself and I've been through some things, but, there's so many paths that we can take to understanding ourselves and asking these deeper questions. But there are a lot of people that feel stuck and feel like they don't know where to turn or where hope is, and what we're talking about in terms of energy healing or energy medicine is another path. And I want you to kind of explain, if you will, like how does energy healing work for somebody who's coming in, and who are the types of people that you see? Why do they come in? What are the things that they come in like in search for healing for?
Yeah, I see the common pattern on the types of people I get. And I always tell people also, like if they're new practitioners, that you're going to help people who've walked the same path as you. There's always something that's connecting you very similarly to where you've come from your depth.
Right? I always say, like, I'm most equipped to help the people I once was.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, there's just no way around it, right? That's why there's just no way where you can't not do that work still or continue to. So you could unfold, because there is someone that's going to come your way when they're ready, when it's ready for you, the whole connection's ready for you to help them. Yeah. Or for you to help each other.
Right.
Right. Because it's never a one-way street.
Totally.
Someone's just kind of maybe a little ahead and can understand. So now we're providing knowledge that way. But I notice it's the people who, a similar story, is tired of feeling disconnected to themselves.
Yeah.
Are the ones that are coming to me. Lots of people with medical issues do also come to me, but they don't realize it's spiritual. But it's because they've been depending on all these other people outside of themselves to tell them what they're going through, and they believe it. But then still they're disconnected to self. So then they all of a sudden get connected with someone that goes, hey, I went to this person and she really helped me understand what this is. And all of a sudden my anxiety is gone. And then, there's times where people are like, wait, I've been on anxiety meds for 10 years. So you went to her 1 or 2 times and you're telling me that you don't want to take your anxiety meds, it's like, no way I'm discouraging that or like encouraging people to do that. But it's to really expand on their own feelings, because that's what's being shoved all the way in, is what they're feeling about themselves.
Right. And we're just taught to listen to someone else as expert or outsource our power that you know best about like what's going on with me, versus learning how to turn inward and self-inquire about what is present within my body. What am I actually feeling right here, right now? What is alive in me, versus suppressing that or numbing that or putting a Band-Aid on it with all these other things that we try to do. This work is helpful in being able to help people attune to what is happening within me.
Yeah. Reiki, so 2 main things that I do, which you did mention in the beginning, is I do Reiki, and then there's medical intuition.
Right.
So with Reiki definitely helps people make space in their body. It removes the blockages, and the blockages could be like the anxiety that people are constantly functioning on, but they don't realize why they're having anxiety. It could be a blocked heart, so things like that. Energy could work in so many ways. But what it truly does in the simplest way that I could say it in is it makes room. And then it's up to the practitioner to provide information, if they can receive that information, of what it is that was taking up the room.
Sure.
Right. So that's where the medical intuition comes in for me. The fact that I was already heightened in my senses, being a medical intuitive means I can read the body and I could translate it. Right. So that's where people are like, oh, you're psychic. Oh, you're a medium, things like that, because it does kind of come out the body and now becomes more in time and space. Simple for me, but it sounds complex to people. But it works hand in hand, right? Because a Reiki practitioner could be like, okay, I could feel static right here. But me as a medical intuitive, integrating the two, I could say, hey, your heart has static. I could tell that this static is translating to this anxiety that you're holding in, and your shoulders are tense because I could feel tears. So if you feel like you need to cry in this session, you feel safe enough to cry, please do.
So it's like a language that you have learned to interpret, of understanding how blocked chakras or energy blockages are connected to physical ailments.
Yes.
Understood. Yeah.
And it could go very deep into like emotional, traumatic things, and even like organs, like everything talks, right? Yeah. Just because the word has medical in front of it doesn't mean it's always medical, but it does go to the root of a lot of things that are becoming physical.
Totally. Yeah. Well, because everything that becomes physical, it only manifests physically. It first manifests energetically before it manifests physically. Yeah. Right. So everything that we see in the physical 3D world, even if that's an ailment in our own physical bodies, whether it's showing up as cancer or a tumor or showing up as a headache or anxiety, first started on an energetic vibrational stage first, and then it progresses into physical manifestation.
Yep. And that's why it's always, you got to be aware of who we're surrounding ourselves with, right? Because there was this thing that Joe Dispenza talked about where there could be an energy in your auric field that could be dormant for very long. And that energy that's kind of like bundled, just kind of surfacing around you, once it gets triggered by something, and that something could be this negative energy that you surrounded yourself with, but it's not valuable for your being, but you just keep allowing yourself to be in this toxic situation, it might just turn that thing on. And that thing could be the tumor or the blisters that are happening on your skin. Yeah.
You were talking about how Reiki is this practice of creating space. The way that I kind of describe that to my clients is, and it's always come to me in the weirdest kind of visual, is almost if our channel, so I think of it as our spine or all of our energetic centers that go from, our crown all the way down to our root, is almost like a, it's like what is it? Like when you have somebody who has a plumber that comes and cleans out.
Oh, like where your hair gets stuck?
Yeah. Like if your hair gets stuck or you've backed up the toilet and you have to have someone come and unclog. Right. Unclog the system. That's what our channel is. It gets clogged. And so a lot of we are energetically, emotionally constipated, essentially, and we've gotten clogged up, and we need to clean that out to create space so that that energy can flow through our pipes, essentially.
Yep, exactly.
And we can fully digest the energy and move that. And so what I see is like when I do Reiki on myself, or I have a practitioner like yourself work on me, or vice versa, I'm working on a client, it's the process of unclogging the channel, so that this life force energy can move to the organs and the parts of the body and the parts of, like all the parts of you, to nourish you. And if it's clogged, it's not able to function properly, essentially.
It's like a car, right? Yeah. It's like you could have dirty air filters, but the air's still blowing, but the quality isn't great.
Totally.
But you never even knew sometimes what type of quality you could have because you never thought to change the filter until the filter is just like not pumping air out. And you're like, okay, what's wrong?
And you're functioning on a level in which you think is normal, but it's not optimal in any regard.
You're just constantly allowing yourself to adjust to these malfunctions.
Yeah. Okay, so you said, what happened after the 7 years?
The 7 years, through that time, I ended up coming to Las Vegas, trying to pick myself back up. And my license was in California, so came to Nevada and didn't really know what to do. Worked really hard also for a little bit to get the license here. I did. My first job back was at the Spring Valley ER, worked there for 1 day, and I was like, I'm done.
That's all I need to know.
I was literally like, I'm done. I can't even finish the shift. Like my body was just like, we gave you that space to really think about what you wanted. Then you put yourself back. And then I remember messaging my dad and I was like, I'm going to come home. Like, I'm going to come home because I finally came back home to my parents. So now I was back with them.
Full circle.
Yeah, full circle, ran away, came back. And then I was like, and my son was turning 1 this year too. So I was a new mom. A lot of different things were happening and didn't go back. And I didn't know what to do for a while, was no longer dancing because my body was also different after being a mom. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to find something. At this time, I was also already on antidepressants because I was just over the anxieties and things like that. Kind of went back. Like all I could say is that whatever I was doing, I just kept going back and forth because I was trying to find the comfort, the trust. And then now being a new mom, now I have to do what's right, whatever the right is.
Yeah. The pressure to just figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah. So I looked on Craigslist and I was doing lots of different trade shows. I was kind of bartending here and there, doing things that were kind of bringing back like the wild in me because I was always kind of young, wild, free until I was like, oh, I'm a mom now. I have to choose. And then I was like, after a while, I was like, yeah, no, I don't really have to choose where to be. I just have to be fluid and allow myself to be, but just responsibly.
Yeah.
And then eventually I saw that the cannabis industry was coming into play in Nevada. And in one trade show, which was the Champs trade show, that was kind of like the boom, the start of everything. Everyone's talking about it. And now here all the supplies being provided, all the materials, all those little things. Met someone and he was talking about how we're going to open the first dispensary on the Strip. And I was like, okay. And he was like, you want to apply? And I was like, hell the fuck yeah. And I was like, he's like, what do you do? And I was like, I'm a nurse. And he was like, what? And I was like, no, but I don't like it, And I was like, I don't want to do that. And I think this would be great. I was a stoner when I was in middle school.
Sure.
Went to the interview maybe like 2 months later, told my mom I got a job at the pharmacy. Oh God.
Pharmacy.
Mom. And I left the hospital to go to a pharmacy. She's like,
that's
hilarious. With an Aura or not? An LVN. I was an LVN at the time. And I was just like, oh God, it's an herbal one.
That's so funny.
So it was all these little, soft things to enter in. And eventually I told her what it was. And she was like, what are you doing with your life? She's like, you know what? You have 2 months and you can get the F out because I don't know what you're doing. You're a new mom. She's like, you might as well let us adopt him because, you don't have insurance. And she's like, are they giving you insurance? I was like, yeah. And I was like, no.
Yeah. But
I ended up working at the dispensary and my passion during that time was healing with tea. And cannabis was just, something we've always dreamed of during that time. Worked as a bud tender. And then this is when the skill set of me in business started to come into play with it being a new industry. Started a lot of different systems that helped integrate just the business with the states and things like that. And I stuck around because the owner's son one time asked me, what do you want here? You know, like, why are you here? And I was like, oh, I want to combine weed and tea, you know, and like heal people. And then that happened. And then I ended up moving into a production facility, and that production facility utilized my knowledge, my resources. They bought Tea Gallery. They bought the entire company. I gave them the whole business plan for everything. And then they basically pushed me out.
No.
Yeah. But while we were growing into that business plan, they put me in the chocolate room. So that's
this is where
the chocolates come into play. But then I was kind of getting tossed around for my knowledge a lot, but I didn't realize, hey, I was so capable of this. I had to learn. Lots of different healing started to happen during here in my growth to show me that I was capable beyond nursing to make money. You know,
wow.
So that happened. And then next, I left that and ended up going to a bigger facility, and then started doing like designs for like new ones. And it just grew from there. And eventually I ended up going into a Reiki circle again one time, because I was living with a family friend. And she goes, hey, someone at my work was talking about Reiki. Don't you do that? And I was like, yeah. But that day was one of the biggest days I had to make a choice, because I had goals in industry. And during this time, it was young, and I felt like I was very much in the forefront, a pioneer of like, I guess, being an influencer of like where the industry is going to go and the things that I've done. So I wanted to just take every speaking opportunity at that time. And I was going to be a panelist on like this group this one night, and the Reiki circle was on the same night. So I messaged them that same day and was like, hey, I can't come. Blamed it on my son. Oh God, horrible. Blamed it on my son and went to the Reiki circle instead.
Okay.
And then that day changed my life moving forward again. I was just like, damn, I can't believe like I ditched the panel for a damn Reiki circle. I could have Instagram content, I was thinking about all these things. And after that, it was on a Thursday. I was going every Thursday, and I didn't realize the little residue of my divorce was finally disappearing in my mind. It was like the attachments of my thoughts, which I was like, yeah, no, I don't even think about that no more. Yeah, I do. It was there beyond me really trying to see it.
Wow. And
I was just getting healed. The next thing you know, I was like, holy moly, something different is happening to me. I was like, I need to take Reiki 2. And then from Reiki 2, I was like, oh my God, something else is happening to me. Like my vision, all my senses were coming back just in a different way. And it's something just made me feel like I need to use it. I need to do it.
Yeah.
And I was like, do what though? And then just being so curious of all of my changes again, I just started like, I don't know, challenging myself. Hey, okay, practice on people at these Reiki circles. Next thing you know, I would start getting insights. People at these circles would be like, hey, can I be your person today? And I'd be like, I should probably give someone else a chance. Every time they'd see my hand go up and be like, Rara's giving, like, Rara, can you do me? And I'd be like, maybe we should wait until everyone gets a chance, because it was kind of the same people starting to come to me. So I started seeing like there's something that I'm doing that they don't really want to go to the other people that raise their hands, I was kind of oblivious, but I think I was just so humble about it. I was just like, oh, why don't you try them? And they're like, no, because I want you. You helped, blah, blah, blah. And you told her, da, 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 da. And then next, I got masters, and then plot twists. Everywhere that I've gotten the place that I got my 2 and masters is now Oura Ritual and Practice, because it was the old Reiki center that I used to go to every Thursday.
Wow. And that's where I practice now. And that's like your baby.
It is my baby. And the original mission of that, or like the vision of that, was, where people could come and do their magic. There was a specific kind of heart that, like, with the people that go in there, the ones that are dedicated to themselves as well as their people. And it's hard to explain.
It has to be.
And I know so many places are like that as well, but it's different, like I could feel that in Oura and the people that are there.
Well, what you're speaking to is just integrity.
Yeah.
Just the embodiment that the practitioner has, and the type of people that you bring into your space are people who are doing that work, not just as a practitioner, but as a participant themselves, and that is what I think equips and enables someone to be truly a master at what they do, and powerful in the ability to channel that type of energy and healing. It's because you can't give what you haven't received.
True. Yeah.
You know?
So I've definitely dedicated my life to teaching people how to utilize their senses, and it does, a lot of things do root from Reiki, because I'm like, yeah, Reiki will heal you. You don't have to use it. Right. But then being able to understand how you're functioning and why you're choosing all the things that you're choosing and how it's creating a ripple effect out there in the world. You just be a better person for yourself and for the damn environment.
Right. Well, I think of it now as like a part of my energetic and spiritual hygiene.
Yeah.
Like I get up every day and I take a shower and I brush my teeth and I do all the things. But like, what are the practices in which I'm utilizing on a daily, weekly basis that help me stay spiritually and energetically hygienic and clean? And inevitably we go out into the world and we have so many roles that we play and we're interacting with so many people and there's so much happening on a collective level that we're all feeling the impacts of, whether it's cosmic or collective and like we're doing it to ourselves, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're feeling that. And what are the things that we're doing to help us process and digest that? And a lot of people have no tools. And this is one of those that has really been supportive for me. And obviously Oura is a place that I love and hold so dear in my heart. And I'm so grateful for, because it's given me a place to practice, my gifts and to support my clients. And none of that would be, I mean, maybe I would be doing it in another place, who knows? But our paths crossed at the perfect time to kind of continue to empower me to give my gifts in the world. I'm so grateful for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Happy to have you there.
Thank you. Before we wrap up, I do want to ask, for those, I know we talked about this offline, but people who are in that questioning phase of like, when things are going, life feels chaotic.
Yeah.
Right. And for a lot of people, that's the season right now. There's a lot of shadow stuff coming up for people around this time of year. And when people get overwhelmed and they get scared, whether it's through the news or just stuff that's happening in their own lives, we can oftentimes revert back to old patterns and old ways of protecting ourselves. And I know you've mentioned, you've seen some clients that have kind of, they're like, okay, this isn't for me anymore. Like I'm going to go back to old ways. What are you seeing that's happening in your practice? And do you have any advice, tips for people who are feeling maybe, that sense of fear in the air right now with so much happening, whether it's on an economic level, global level, what are your 2 cents on that?
So I'd say neutralize, because like what you were talking about earlier, when you open up social media, it's just that subtle cloud that starts to come. It's just neutralize, turn those things off, nurture yourself again, separate yourself for however long it takes until you start to see your moods or your fears shift. And then start to do whatever you want to do again, like that normal routine after, and be able to feel and be more aware of like what is adding to that fear so that you can remove it. It's almost like just being experimental with yourself. But there's a lot of things out there that are creating toxicity to our minds. So I'd say at least first, just neutralize and nurture. And what I mean by neutralize, it's like, okay, just you're on your phone, just turn it off. And then just, even if it's just sit there. And then think about, okay, if I was on my phone, which I'm not no more, what do I want to do? Sometimes we're already lost there.
Yeah.
We're just like, oh, back to this.
I don't know what else to do.
Yeah. So it's just neutralize and ask yourself, what do I want to do right now?
Come back to self. Yeah. I mean, it's so simple.
It is, but it's so
hard and it's so necessary because we're so plugged in that we get confused about what's me and what's not me, how do I really feel versus like, is this a feeling that I'm taking on that's actually not mine?
Yeah. Are you just doing, or are you doing it with intention?
Totally.
So just neutralize, bring yourself back to you, and then do the next step with intention.
Yeah. And it's helpful to have guides. It's helpful to have mentors, teachers. You're an incredible one. For people who have really enjoyed this conversation, they're interested in understanding more about your story, your work, Oura, learning from you, what you have going on. Like, where would you point people? What direction if they want to learn more? I know you have a podcast of your own. Like, tell people where they can get more information.
I do. My podcast is very new. but it works with my mood.
Yeah.
Slow and steady. The creative mind is very, very interesting. The podcast is on YouTube and Spotify. It is Oura Ritual and Practice, the podcast. And on all social platforms, my handle is I am Rara Rivera. And my website is ouraritualandpractice.com, which, you'll get a lot of info, the services that we provide, as well as the practitioners that are there and what they do. So you could see who might work best for you.
Yeah. I love what you're doing. I want to support in any way that I can. And what you're bringing to Las Vegas, really being a pillar of holistic health and healing in the space. And I think that's it's so great to see, Vegas really taking a stand for healing and being a conduit for light in this, in the city and in the world. And so especially if you are in the city or you're coming, whether you're visiting or you're a local here, check out Oura Ritual and Practice, because there's so many amazing practitioners, Rara being one of them. And maybe there's one that fits what you're looking for, and you can come get a session in person with one of us, and you can book through the website. So we'll put all of that in the show notes, make it super easy for you guys to access and to follow Rara's story and her online. And I just want to say thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
This was super fun.
Any final words before we leave?
I would just say, stay curious, everyone.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason why we do what we're doing and think what we're thinking. They all root from somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Curiosity is like a superpower. If you could learn to follow it, it will take you very, very far. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please share it with a friend, like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, and even go so far, if you really want to say thank you, to leave a rating and review. That would just make my heart so happy, and also help this episode and this show get out to more listeners who need it. So thank you for being here, and we'll see you next week on the Coachable Podcast. See ya.